Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of A Bit of This and a Bit of That. My name is Yulyah Barani, and in this episode, we will continue our talk on mental illness and mental health. Hi, wow, finally, after what feels like forever, I am back here with a new episode. It's so long overdue actually, but I get caught up in some stuff, and actually, since a few weeks ago, I began to become really determined to come back at this podcast, this precious podcast of mine. I had been neglecting it for long enough, but anyway, now we are here. This is the fourth, which is also the last part in our series on mental illness and mental health talk. And if you're listening to this, I assume you have already listened to the first three parts of the talk. But if you have not, I suggest it will be best if you listen to those episodes first before continuing with this. But you will still able to follow the talk though, even if you start with this episode. So have it your way. And I guess thank you for giving this podcast and giving my talk a chance. And by the way, for this episode, I can feel it already that this is going to be long. So get on board. Here we go. In the first two parts, I have talked in detail about my struggle with mental health. And in part three, I talked about how my profound shift of perception on mental illness and mental health and on life in general happened, and how it enabled me to go through a journey to healing. So, this part, as the last part, I want it to be kind of conclusive, like a holistic view of who I am as an individual and what made me into that individual. Also, how my experience with mental illness and my struggle and journey on mental health shape my thoughts and again shape the person that I am today. Those process of thinking and experiencing goes to one final destination, which is acceptance to one own self as a whole, and that will be the focus on our talk today. I have always wanted to talk about this topic in length, actually, since I first made this podcast, but I always fade not being able to control myself to be all emotional because I'm the type of person who still cries at the same sad or touching thing or whatever tears inducing things, even after seeing it for the 10th time. And this, talking about myself, not specifically about one topic, but about the whole of me, my insecurity, my demons, the ugly sides of myself, the vulnerable sides of myself. It is always a hard thing, probably harder than the earlier talks in this series, actually, and possibly because this is the root of everything, and hopefully also the conclusion of everything, a closure of some sort, and I guess that might be the reason why it took so long to finally get back to this and finally do this talk. But now I'm confident that I'm ready for this talk. I am at the point in my life where I know that this is the right time to do it. I think I will begin this talk with a description of who and how I am as a person, as well as my childhood, my upbringing, because I believe those things take a huge part in my becoming the person that I am now. And that is actually a hard task. After all, each and every one of us, including myself, we're all a complex creature, but I will try anyway. I grew up in a small island, the second oldest of six siblings, in a quite comfortable family. We didn't have much growing up, but we're not lacking of any substantial things either. My parents are both educators, and we live in a neighborhood where everyone is of high education background. So basically, everyone is on average. So growing up, I was the only girl in my family. My baby sister was only born when I was already in middle school. So, and in my neighborhood as well, there is no girl my age. Literally. There were actually two girls, I think I was close with in my class, but they lived quite far from my house. So, growing up, I was surrounded by boys. I played boys' game, I conversed in boys' ways. I learned to fit in, to blend in. And as you guys probably know, boys and girls are not exactly the same in navigating their lives at that age. So the need to not stand out, to perfectly blend in with my surrounding, molded me into this individual who's so familiar with self censorship. I used to never complain. I did not refuse when asked to do something. I tried to help as much as I could because I used to think only that way then I would be loved and adored. So basically, I just accepted everything. And only after I aged and after going through my struggle with illness and mental health, then I realized that it was an extremely toxic way of practicing obedience. And I was not particularly close to anyone as well. So when the boys were busy doing their own stuff, I had to be satisfied being on my own. And even with my extended family, actually, my cousins, I was not that close with them, not as closer as my siblings to them at least. But even then, I understood why. I was not exactly the fun person to be with. The same case with my grandparents as well. I was not as adored as my older brother. I was not good at being adorable, so it's fair, I guess. But anyway, growing up, I can be categorized as a lonely child. But at that time, it was not a problem for me. I was really a happy child, a very happy child with night conversation with my parents, with playing house with my siblings, with reading books and writing notes, with doing science experiment in exercise books. I was okay with what I had. I never questioned or addressed lots of things about myself. When I was struggling with my mental health, I came to realize so many things about myself. So, the reason why in the previous part I said that the darkest period in my life was a turning point because it allowed me to confront myself and my personality and the status quo I had been keeping regarding that. I used to think that I was okay because the way I was back then was it was never proven to be problematic. But then my illness happened and I got to see myself in its lowest form, in the lowest place, and it gave me a space to really see the way I faced my inner thoughts and my problems, the way I did my internal crisis management. Um, and I then learned that there were so many problems. The first thing, the very first thing I learned about myself is that I found it difficult to describe myself because I always felt like a walking contradiction. For example, there are times I wish I didn't have so-called friends, especially when I was so occupied, but a friend requested my help and I didn't have the heart to decline it. So I will find myself, working on the request with not so bright energy. But the funny thing is, after 1 hour or two, I would become happy again, wanting to do my best to help them, realizing or, forcing myself to realize, to understand that they must really need my help. That's why they asked. And I talked a lot, but I say very little. Most of the times I say nothing at all. My best friend Atun once said that sometimes she feels like I don't need her because I never shared my problem with her, and she gets nervous when she wants to talk. She wants to ask me about private matter because I'm too private, and she doesn't want to be nosy because she knows I'm not particularly fond of nosy people. And it broke my heart when she said that. Um, in Indonesia, there's a word curhat, which means opening up our heart and share our story to others. And I had never done that until a few years ago. Not on serious stuff, at least. I kept to myself most of the times. The bad way to put it, I was defensive. I used to not care at all to, what people might say or think about me. Sometimes I even hated it when people analyzing me as if they ever knew me at all. So I was not the easiest person to be friend with. Probably I still have. So the very few friends who stay are the chosen ones. But anyway, I'm also straightforward when addressing my friends' problems. I was nicknamed the Bean because my friends can just throw anything and I'll accept it. I will listen without judgment and do my best to comfort them or come up with a solution. In contrast to that, though, I am very roundabout when talking about my own self. I'm not used to that, to revealing my inner thoughts. I have this amazing ability to drive people away from me. Oh, this is too sad. I didn't want to lose them, but at the same time, I didn't know how to keep them. To be to be in the scope of definition of a good friend according to them and according to common understanding of what a friend is and supposed to be. I guess, I don't know, being used to loneliness makes someone unknowingly put an invisible wall around them. There are many times I feel like I don't belong anywhere. I even question, do I even have real friends, when I actually know that I do? And it's not on my friends, it's on me. I don't treat them like close friends, in the sense that I don't really open up to them. I don't share my story. I rarely share what's in my thought. I couldn't deal with the fear of disappointment to find out that people couldn't be so understanding when in truth I should be able to be more, to be more trusting, especially to those I am close with. Um, Again, being the second born in a huge family, I had to become, I don't know, I had to be the most sensible one, I guess. Especially being the eldest girl. I don't know how to articulate the difficulties I was faced with, but it was difficult. But then to blame what happened to me on that part of my upbringing, it doesn't settle well with me because I am extremely proud of my upbringing, of my parents, of my family, and I hate the possibility of, myself ever being ungrateful. And that thought creates confusion inside me. I didn't know how to complain. I was the type, I still am actually, to just spit out swear words I know for about 1 minute when something upsetting happened, then control my breath for another 1 minute. Then I will be like, that upsetting moment never happened at all. Sometimes when upsetting things happen, or sometimes even without specific trigger at all, I would be acting in an quite off-putting way, and that becomes my reason I enjoy my own company because I don't want to ruin the mood for others. And I had always lived with that condition since childhood, but I only get diagnosed when I was struggling with mental health. I also used to be a crybaby when I was little. It was so easy for me to cry. But then, I don't know since when, I somehow stopped showing my emotion. Even then, years before I got my clinical diagnosis of mental illness, I had to pinch myself to make myself hurting enough to stop me from being numb to anger or sadness or frustration. Because I knew back then somehow that numbness was not healthy. So I forced myself to show um, just any emotion at all, mostly through my self hurting, just so as long as I won't be numb. And I used to struggle with attachment. I'm a very emotional person. Nostalgia easily occupies my mind. And in the past, I didn't know a good way to deal with that. And I didn't necessarily want to change myself either. But then, after years and years of physical illness and mental illness, and after all those experiences, I guess I don't know, I am better trained to accept things, I guess, to accept everything and anything. Oh, I will share a story. So, not long ago, my old laptop broke down, and that laptop is one possession I simply cannot let go of. But when it happened, when it broke, although there's still this hollow feeling inside me. I could take a long, like a deep breath and try to carry on with my day. In the past, it would be impossible. I was always under the impression that I only have a little, in the sense that I'm not really interested in that many of things, and I don't know many people, I don't own many stuff. So when any of those dear to me was taken from me, I found it really hard to cope with. For example, when my dad's old computer finally gave in after, I don't know, almost 20 years, and then my dad let me know about it, I couldn't sleep. There's this odd sense of sadness creeping in. I was so caught up in thinking how I won't be able to see the stuff I used to read on that computer or write on that to the point I couldn't sleep at all. Or when my very treasured Harry Potter glass broke, I couldn't move for almost 15 minutes, like literally staring at the broken pieces. I was that much emotionally attached to things, and that is probably the reason why I was so lacking in courage. I was too careful, way too careful in opening up, in showing my emotion, in, building a relationship, because I was so afraid of disappointment and of the potential of loss, of losing something, someone. And it made me into this very timid person who was so scared of so many things. In short, I was a coward. During and after going through the struggle with my mental health, those traits and personalities of mine make me think a lot. And I came to a conclusion that indeed there were some unfinished businesses inside me that I needed to confront. I tried to make sense of my upbringing. Was it a happy one? Was it a sad one? How were my parents raising me and my siblings? And this part is a confusing one because I had a great childhood. No question and no arguing about that. But then I had to acknowledge that some aspects were problematic about me. And it took me quite a long time to make sense of this. I grew up as a model student. I grew up as the unproblematic child. I grew up in an average family, an average environment where everyone has a safe job and safe career, and where ambition was encouraged. And to be honest, I was and I'm not an ambitious person. I was not necessarily competitive as well. I was good at studying, I was good at math and physics and other subjects, but I have always loved poetry and literature. Being a thinker and a lover of art was more interesting to me. I am a very romantic person, not in the sense that I give or want chocolate or flowers or celebrating things, but in the sense that I tend to go deep on meanings. I love seeing the shades of sky change every evening. I love, observing the way the earth transforms after heavy rain, like those kinds of stuff. So I don't think my mind is internally designed to compete and to be so ambitious. I studied simply because I loved studying, but I also can't deny that being the best was what's expected from me. So I was afraid of not meeting the expectation. There was little to no space for mistake or falling behind. So myself, as a response to that, I reduced my value to only as the non-problematic child. So when I am not that anymore, I don't feel worthy of love. And that is the major part in my journey with healing and with acceptance. Because mm, this, I don't know, this desire to be significant, this obsession of wanting to feel needed, to be useful, it grew into something resembling an illness in myself. It transformed into, I don't know, into um, a sense of insecurity in so many aspects of life. But now, when thinking about this, especially how childhood affected me in my adult life, I have matured enough to realize that indeed growing up is hard. Relationship is hard. Every family has issues, and it's not right to look for perfection in our siblings and parents in our friendship, because honestly, there were times I would wonder, how would I be if I was raised differently? What if they were like this? What if they did it this way? But now I am I am extremely satisfied with all that. And in regards to my mental illness as well and my problems with mental health, sometimes I would think in the past, what if it never happened? But then, the moment I realized the many things, the many good things I gained along the way, along that journey, I know that I lost my rights to complain by then. And that might be a little harsh to myself, but I think it's important to be fair. Sometimes we have to force ourselves to see reasons. One thing I'm probably most grateful for is how far I am from being a bitter person, despite the many adversities I went through in my life. Because I'm still the ever bright person I always am. I am still very easy to please. I am still a very happy person. And I know I have my childhood and my upbringing and my parents and my siblings to thank for that. As I was preparing and arranging my thoughts for this talk, I thought of the most important aspects in coming to terms with ourselves as the whole of us. Um, and there are three things I want to talk about. The first one is about facing regret, letting go and moving on. The second is about freeing ourselves from the need to compare with others. And the third is freeing ourselves from being overly worried about what others' perception of us, or in other words, to be confidently wearing our own skin. Now, let's talk about that. When we have gone through adversities in life, I think it's impossible to not have any regret. Actually, even without major adversities, regret is and will always be there. So for me, when trying to make sense of everything I have gone through and um, the impact on me, it's important to be fair. I find it liberating to acknowledge that it did happen, that, you know, I've been to the lowest and the darkest, and it's dirty and filthy in there, but I found my way out, and that is the most important thing. Because when the past suffering is too huge and the impact still affects our life to the current time, our minds is so easily trapped in thinking of what might have been, It is so easy to feel bad about ourselves. Even if we try to forget everything, to convince ourselves, don't look back. But again, those memories, those hurtful memories, are ever persistent. It will appear in front of our eyes again and again, and it's so easy to be triggered. About this, there's a quote I love, which is ascribed to the Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist and philosopher Viktor Frankl. It states that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I personally think that is how we should approach responding to what's going on in our head and our personal life. After experiencing things, the best thing we can do to ourselves is growing up. We have to be proactive in thinking and choosing what's best for ourselves. I often say to myself when I'm being triggered, don't get too hung up on things that can only make you feel bad about yourself. And it's important to constantly remind ourselves of that. Because healing is a never ending process. Being at peace with one own self, being at peace with where we are in life, we have to work on that. After sometimes, I actually think it's not hard to go through. It's just hard to start, and the process is never ending, and not so many people have the passions to go through, you know, never ending things. Because in healing, we often think, in journey with struggle and healing, you go through it, you meet the end, then case closed. Nothing will ever be wrong anymore. The truth is, it doesn't work that way. And for me personally, I want to push myself to do, the constant healing. I don't want to be an angry person, keeping so much anger inside me. That's not what I want for myself. I don't want to live with regret. Um, the next thing is this is this is the villain in almost everybody's life: comparison with others. We have to tackle this in order to get to the point of self acceptance. Actually, since long before, I have always been good at this. I am able to do an objective assessment to myself: what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, my strengths and my shortcomings. But I guess my experience with mental health problems, it challenged me to really think about this all over again. First, I want to talk about physical attractiveness. Oh, there's a story I want to share with you. So, not long ago, one of my friends suddenly texted me and said, Yul, this friend of yours is absolutely gorgeous. So, she knows one of my best friends, but never seen her face before. And when she saw that friend's photo, she was surprised because my best friend was so pretty. I think I'm surrounded with beautiful people. My best friends are all what you call traditional beauty, and myself just plain me. But what I want to say is, it is important to enable ourselves to enjoy looking at beautiful things without feeling bad about ourselves. And not only about physical attractiveness, but other attributes as well, especially now with social media as well. I want to talk about this more deeply in another episode, but regarding the topic of talk in this episode, I want to touch a little on that. There are ways too many chances for us to feel lacking, to feel bad about ourselves, to be the defeated and the loser in our scheme of comparison. So, no good outcome will ever come from unnecessary comparison. Only envy, jealousy, and the attack to our self esteem. So, nothing good. This thought that we have to be beyond average to deserve good things, to feel like we exist and we matter, That's what I find extremely toxic and problematic within our current society. Because in truth, there's no need for harsh comparison. We can just stay on our lane and do our own thing, do our best in our capacity, because we're more or less the same. You know, on I don't know, we're just human. So there's no need for constant comparison. On common humanity and how we are the same as others, I'm going to quote Zadie Smith, which is one of my favorite writers. She says this: I think the hardest thing for anyone is accepting that other people are as real as you are. That's it. Not using them as tools, not using them as examples, or things to make yourself feel better, or things to get over or under. Just accepting that they are absolutely as real as you are. That's what she says. For me, it goes both ways. To be human means to be imperfect. The shared human experience. Because we are often isolated, or we often isolate ourselves in our suffering, in, our imperfection. The truth is, we're all just human. No difference, just human. I want to share a story. So, a few weeks ago, I joined a community called Chit Chat Club, and there are so many smart people. Not that I am not smart myself. Oh, what is this? Intermezzo, guys. Anyway, those people I met, through Chit Chat Club, they are extremely high achieving and they are outgoing and confident, while me, you know, just me, the ever awkward and introverted person that I am. But I enjoy challenging myself that way, meeting strangers, sharing stories and thoughts, just focusing on my story and enjoying other people's stories without the need to compare. The fact is, there won't be any shortage in people having better careers than us, people figuring out their lives earlier than us. So why torture ourselves with that? With, meaningless comparison. So it's important, I think it's important to have a sense of self-understanding, to have a fair perspective, to look at ourselves. For me personally, I love the plain and ordinary me. I'm happy being here, being myself. Talking about self esteem and acceptance, for me, the most important thing is having self compassion, to have the room for mistakes and messing things up and having the courage to pick ourselves up from that. I think it's important to have a constant conversation with ourselves. Like, how are we? How are we doing? It's important to be confident in our own skins. And it's also important to always leave a room for improvement, I believe. If you don't like it, if you don't like, parts of yourself, change it. If you think it's bad for you, stop doing it. But we don't have to change if the only purpose is to fit in or to please the other people. It's important to stop being too conscious of what other people, might perceive of ourselves. I used to find socializing and maintaining casual friendship quite difficult because of my personality. It's too exhausting for me. For example, I don't do mind games. I am as transparent as a person can be. And I often say to some people, don't spend too much energy in overanalyzing me. You'll be exhausted and there'll be no point in that. If you want to know something, just ask. Like, I this thing, I really don't understand this game, um, determining when to text or when to text back, this fear of appearing too eager in relationship. I mean, what's wrong with that? This used to frustrate me a lot, and still actually. And this one too. I smile a lot, but please, I simply smile. I'm not flirting. Like, please. It used to really bother me a lot, to the point that I actually thought, should I change into another person just because these personalities of mine, it's prone to misunderstanding. But I don't know. Oh, sometimes I would do something, I would do something, and then right after doing it, I want to bang my head on the nearest wall for feeling so stupid, for fear of appearing as a freak. But now I know, I know that nobody cares as much as we do about ourselves. So stop torturing ourselves with unnecessary assumptions. You know, for me, coming from a very small island and not living in the city, well, I live in the city when I have grown up, but growing up, I am from a small island. It is one thing that helped me so much to maintain a healthy perspective, to look at myself and accepting who I am. I don't know how to best articulate why so, but I guess it offers a quiet confidence in me and a more laid back approach in life. And I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of my identity. And it's true that I don't have as much as other people, but I have enough, and I'm raised with love and laughter and good food and love of God and of humanity, of family values, and I have nothing but gratitude for that. In our journey to self acceptance, to a healthy state of mind, to well being, while still able to maintain a good social life, I believe it takes a huge effort, and communication is really, really vital. The most positive outcome from my struggle with mental health is the way my whole family, our whole family, the children and the parents, how we navigate our way to love and to communicate. And bless my family. They are unbelievably understanding to me in this matter. We were already loud in our love and open with our hearts even before my struggle, my but after that we become even more open and even more louder in loving. And with my friends as well. I have this inside jokes with my close friends that I have to post things on WhatsApp status or Instagram story once in a while so that they will know I'm doing all right. They know I'm still not the type to suddenly text or, call someone and pour my heart out to them. But I also understand that my friends care about me and want to know how I'm doing. So, yeah, my posting things online is our middle ground. Coping mechanism is what I want to call it. And in doing it, it's important for us to know our boundaries. For me, what helped the most to understand ourselves and to come to terms with the way we are as human being is through reading and watching films, through books, films, drama series. I learn about who I am, what I like, what I don't like, what I can tolerate, what I cannot tolerate. It gives me um, a situation and a perspective where I would feel without filtering my emotion, and those, I'll be able to understand myself, even parts that I unknowingly shield from my own self. And it's important to be that, to look at ourselves that way. For example, I easily get lonely when in crowd, huge and noisy crowd. So knowing that, I invent practical steps to survive being in that situation, because sometimes we just cannot help but, to be in those kind of circumstances. It's like creating a safety reassurance for us to navigate in our social life without sacrificing who we are and our well-being. And it's important to be openly vulnerable, at least to ourselves and to our closest ones. Be the best friend for ourselves. So In order to, to do that, I do journaling. I talk gently to myself. I i make a habit of it, of talking with myself. I try to recognize my feeling. And I believe it's important to describe what we feel, like exactly what we feel, as with as much detail as we can. Not only okay, not okay, happy, sad, but exactly the kind of emotion we feel. It's important to recognize that. And one thing that I'm most grateful of for being myself is I know so many things I can do to feel joy. I am good at getting back to being happy. For example, I can just watch someone winning medal at the Olympics, or someone doing an audition show and getting the recognition they deserve, and I will instantly forget my sadness. Like, I will be all right immediately. And I'm good at befriending my mind. Like, when I see my tweets, when I go to Twitter and see my tweets, I realize over and over again I am really a funny person. Hilarious even. Like, I am the private comedian for myself. Like, whatever that is, that going on inside my head, that is my best friend. So I am never short of companion. I'm just too good at having fun on my own. The inner monologue inside my head is just chef kiss. How I love myself for that. Actually, a few hours before doing this talk, I met with my childhood friend, and the long, heartfelt conversation with him really reminds me again of how lucky I am with what I am allowed to have in life. Like, my home and my family is literally heaven on earth. I am blessed with the friends and the kind of relationship I have. So, yeah, I hope this talk doesn't come out as a complaint, because I'm not complaining. I am simply trying to understand myself and how I should go from here, and then, sharing my process to everyone listening, because who knows, maybe it will be useful in some ways for other people. So, I guess I want to conclude this long, heartfelt talk by saying a few things to myself and to everyone listening. Jeff Buckley once said this, that I know there are so many new ideas that haven't even occurred to me, and it's going to take more time and maturity for me to channel them. I'll just let it happen and try not to rush it too much. It's talking about that, probably about music, his music, but I think it's a good mindset to have when talking about meaning. There are some lessons and wisdoms in life that can only be obtained through growing up. So be patient. No need to be so in hurry to make out the meaning of something that happens to us or in our life. The time will come and we'll be ready by then. That's the first thing I want to say to myself and to everyone listening. And then, change is a lifetime journey. So never stop learning about ourselves, about what can be improved, about acceptance and compassion, and make compromises along the way. That's important, because you won't be able to live just by yourself in this world. We are our many personalities all at once, but we exist as those identities in this the form of a human body that is ourself. And we don't have to be this one particular thing, like being stuck in a compartmentalized box. It is perfectly reasonable to be a walking contradiction. For example, myself, sometimes I do want to live in a solitary island, unknown to no one, ignorant to everything, unbothered by anything. I appreciate being alone, being in absolute solitude, doing things on my own in many senses. I am an absolute introvert. Some of my friends even call me an antisocial, and I cannot deny that about myself. But in all truth and honesty, I am very fond of people. I love human beings. I love listening to other people's stories. I love the feeling when I'm able to connect with others. I love the excitement when I allow myself to, the effort to connect and to understand others. And be okay with being you. For me, I am at the point in my life where I can describe myself with sufficient details that sometimes I get lonely, that I laugh from my belly, that I am weird, that I am extremely animated, that I talk funny sometimes, that I am overflowing with love for my family, my friends, and love for humanity. And I don't have to be embarrassed for that. After all, there should be no pride in showing and expressing love. Sometimes I'll be embarrassed because I over explain things. I tend to do that. But it's a lot better than harboring assumptions for me. I hate assumption. I love writing a little more than a verbal confrontation, and my family thankfully understand my way of communicating. I don't shy away from expressing my feeling and my emotion. I avoid explosive confrontation most of the times because I cannot see why I have to make things worse by explosive confrontation when I know I can handle it so much better if I only be patient for 5 minutes. And although though about this, I think with our closest ones, for myself, with my family, sometimes confrontation is better when necessary, and I allow myself to be that way because I'm confident enough about my family's love of me, their love to me, and the level of acceptance and tolerance they have for me. So yeah, I'm confident enough to be that open about my emotion. Sometimes I feel low, sometimes I'm not confident, sometimes I want to bang my head in the wall for saying things I regret. Sometimes I get back to putting walls around me. Sometimes I need space and I don't need to be apologetic about that. Most of the times I choose to yield and I don't have to beat myself for that if it's better for everyone. Yeah, so that it's okay to be lots of things. And when talking about mental health, the struggle with mental health and with self acceptance, I believe closure is what we need to move on to, to let go and to accept everything we've gone through and what it had made to ourselves. But then closure will always be challenged. It will always be challenged. Your mind, our minds will never stop the questions. So the fight is it's a never ending one. But for myself, I know the way to get back to a happy and positive state of mind. I know how to help myself now, and that's what matters. I have issues, true, but so what? Other people have it as well. It simply means I am human. It's a confirmation that I'm merely a human being with issues, no more and no less. An objective assessment of oneself doesn't necessarily have to be an excessive criticism of one own self. That to fail without being a failure is is a good mindset to have. Knowing that forgiving ourselves, acknowledging what could have done better doesn't necessarily mean giving in to failing or to the sense of failing. So what I want to say to myself and to anyone's listening is let's learn about unconditional love to one own self. You are bigger than your achievement. You are bigger than your failure. You are bigger than your brightest moments. You are bigger than your darkest moments. You are bigger than your embarrassing moments. You are bigger than what you think you could have achieved. You are way, way bigger than what you thought as your calling in life. Find that sense of self worth and identity and be more courageous. Be more expressive to show yourself and your emotion. Don't choose silence. Do not succumb to the fake safety and the comfortable status quo offered by silence. Give allowance to yourself to be authentic and to be genuine. Remember that you are a real person, a real human being. So choose compassion, choose empathy, choose being real with oneself. It's allowed to be raw because we're all human. Well, I am so proud of myself. I'm so happy to have finished this series on mental illness and mental health talk. And after talking so much, you know, I realized that come to think about it, I actually don't change that much. I simply learn to cope and carve my way to compromise and learn about unconditional love and learn that when struggling, I need to say, it's just a phase. This too shall pass. There's a quote by Dostoevsky from the Brothers Karamazov that I really love. I really, really love. And I think it is the perfect passage to read to summarize what I am trying to say during this 4 episode series. Here I am reading it for you. I seem to have such strength in me now that I think I could stand anything, any suffering, only to be able to say and to repeat to myself every moment, I exist. In thousands of agonies, I exist. I am tormented on the rack, but I exist. Though I sit alone on a pillar, I exist. I see the sun, and if I don't see the sun, I know it's there. And there's a whole life in that, in knowing that the sun is there. Ah, what a beautiful, beautiful way to see life. I will read a poem by Jalaluddin Rumi to best close this talk on coming to terms with all of me. Be like the sun for grace and mercy. Be like the night to cover others' fault. Be like running water for generosity. Be like death for rage and anger. Be like the earth for modesty. Appear as you are. Be as you appear. Well, that's it. I thank you for listening to this episode and for following the talk on mental illness and mental health. I hope this will be helpful in any way. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I am appreciating it so much. And until the next episode, bye.